Welcome to the top 25 albums of 2018. There were so many good albums this year. I've listed 25 of them, and I've been very excited to tell you about them because they're all great. They're all awesome, and I am very happy that I get to share these thoughts with you guys, so let's just get the fuck going. At number 25, we got Trench by 21 Pilots. I was very excited to see them grow on here, and I was kind of expecting that from the singles because pretty much every one of them was really solid, and even though what kind of weighed it down was the fact that most of the songs on the record couldn't quite match up to how good the singles were, of course, leaving out some of the later cuts like Pet Cheetah and Leave the City, which were fantastic. But I don't know, I was just really happy to see them progress in this way. At number 24, we got Testing by A$AP Rocky. Probably spoiled that for you guys. A lot of people really disliked this record, and I can definitely see why. But myself personally, I really enjoyed the kind of liberties that he took on this album, the artistic licensing that he had, and the different kinds of sounds he played with. And for me, if this is what he's going to use to say that he's just testing sounds, I want to hear him go full throttle on the next album. At number 23, we have Beerbongs and Bentleys by Post Malone, a very surprising record as well in terms of growth for an artist like Trench was for 21 Pilots. Beerbongs and Bentleys is for Post Malone because Stoney was garbage. Wow. But yeah, this album was very different. It was just kind of back-to-back hit. Some really interesting and head-boppy melodies paired with some really thought-provoking writing. It signals nothing but good things for the future of Post Malone. Unless Wow says anything, because Wow is not a good song. At number 22, we have Joy as an Act of Resistance by Idols. Woof, this shit is heavy. I'm not a big post-punk guy, but this just blew me away. And at first I didn't like it, and that was mainly just because of the vocals. Like, I really do not like the lead vocalist on this band, even though I do now. I think he fits their aesthetic really well. But at first I was just kind of really lukewarm towards it, even though I really liked the instrumentals. And now that I've kind of seen how well they actually pair together, I've just been bumping this shit hard. It's just a really heavy album, just back to back. At number 21, we have Die Lit by Playboi Carti. No, I'm not joking. This made the list, and I was surprised too, because when I first heard it, I fucking hated it, and I was so for sure that it was going to make like at least the top 3 of like worst of the year. Now in retrospect, it probably wouldn't have, even if I still continued to hate it as much as I did when I first listened to it. But damn, this shit just grew on me so much. It's so catchy. It's so melodic at times. The production is just so unique. It's just a really awesome trap record. Probably like one of the best trap records ever to date, because trap's not a very like old-timey genre. It's been around since fairly recently, but you know, it can't quite make the best yet. I mean, we're not crazy here. We all know what the best is. At number 20, we got Fetti by Curren, Freddie, Gibbs, and The Alchemist. If Please Forgive by Powers Pleasant and Denzel Curry and that whole crew that I mentioned in the songs video was the Infinity War of the year for rap, this is the Guardians of the Galaxy. The pairing is so good. All these people just work amazingly together. Curren has his stoner East Coast flow, obviously. Freddie Gibbs just has his super, like, gangsta West Coast flow. And then The Alchemist has this incredible production. At number 19, we got Sweetener by Ariana Grande. A very meaningful record for her, probably her best yet, I'd say. And just some very meaningful lyrics, some interesting production, and overall just a fun, nice vibe, where most artists who have been through as much tragedy as she has at the moment would typically just come out and be like, I'm sad. At number 18, we got Oil of Every Pearls on Insides. Wow, that is a mouthful, by Sophie. This record's weird. It's really weird, but you know, it's fun. It's a very fun industrial album, some really unique production going on, some really weird vocals that come in at times. But you know, the main thing you're here for is the production, and it's very awesome. At number 17, we have Isolation by Kali Uchis. One of the best R&B albums of the year. Every single song is completely unique from the last. Every single feature is just paired so well with each song. That Steve Lacy track is just so groovy, so fun. That Tyler Creator's track sounds straight off of Flower Boy. That Damon Albarn feature on In My Dreams, which I featured on Best Songs of the Year list, sounds like a song from the newest Gorillaz album that came out this year, the Now Now. Everyone sounds great, but no one sounds as good as Kali herself. She does an amazing job here. Some fantastic vocals. Works perfectly with her production that she's got here, and I loved it. It was a fun time. At number 16, we got Oxnard by Anderson .Paak, repping his hometown and doing a damn fine job. All the phenomenal drumming, all of the incredible bass lines, all of the amazing pieces of synth funk, all of the more rap influence tracks that he has, which there's more here than there have been on any of his other albums before. It's such a fun listen. I wish Bubblin' was on here. Why couldn't it have been? It's so fitting. At number 15, we have Twin Fantasy by Car Seat Headrest. Again, some will call this cheating because it is a remake of an album that came out in 2011 on Bandcamp, but you know, it's been released for streaming platforms this year. It's got a nice fresh coat of paint, and I've never heard it before, so all that pairs well for me to give it my first time listen and decide, hey, this album's really fucking cool, because it is. It's awesome. It's a really phenomenal album. It says a lot about teenage years and growing up and the angstiness of adolescence, and the just barren vibe of some of the instrumentals on here just pairs beautifully with those lyrics and messages. At number 14, we got Daytona by Pusha T. Such a hard-ass album. He says so much on here in 21 minutes. That's EP length. He's backed by Kanye production, and he's a lot more condensed on this album, so there's a lot less room for filler, which there hardly is any. At number 13, we got Astroworld by Travis Scott. Certainly not his best album, because... but it's just a really fun time. It's like you're going to an amusement park. He doesn't actually, I think, rap or sing about anything Astroworld related on here, unless I missed something, but I don't think he was going for it in a conceptual sense like that. I think his whole theme of Astroworld was more so to say, hey, this album's fun. Yeah, there's a couple songs on here that are a little bit depressing, but it's a fun time. And you're there to go and ride the roller coasters, and maybe the sadder songs are meant to display the idea of the walking times and the breaks in between each ride, because you want to be getting to the next ride. You don't want to be sitting around. You don't want to be slouching. And then it concludes with the saddest song on the record, and it's like, oh, it's like I'm leaving. It's like I'm leaving the amusement park. And I think structurally in that way, it is a brilliant concept. And each song is just so unique from the last. Every single one has its own little production tricks. Every single one has really cool features on it. And some of them are returning features, which makes me think more into the concept of oh, maybe those are his recurring friends. And it's fantastic. At number 12, we have the self-titled album from Kids See Ghosts. I'm a massive Kanye fan. You saw that coming. Unfortunately, Ye's not on here, though. Sorry. But I'm also a massive Cudi fan. And, I gotta be honest when I say that this feels like Cudi's record. I hate to say that when it comes to duo projects, because those kind of duo projects mostly have to do with the pairing of the two, and I mostly think of those as the duos coming together and equally matching each other, rather than, oh, who out-rapped who on Watch the Throne? But this time around, I really just gotta say, this feels like a Cudi record, because his influence is on a lot of the production, and he kind of gives the most standout performances on every single song. it feels like he really was ahead of the curve on this one, and he had the most to prove out of anybody here. I mean, Kanye had already kind of shown us a bit of more of his emotional perspective on Ye, so he didn't really have as much to prove here as Cudi did, but Cudi was coming off the heels of Speeding Bullet to Heaven, which is one of the worst albums of the decade, and he came back strong. He came back absolutely swinging. I'm hoping that we get to hear more material like this from him and Kanye in the near future. At number 11, we have Soil by serpentwithfeet, a very emotional record. His vocals are shaky on every single track. It brings you to this emotional standpoint that he's looking at every single song topic from. And there's a lot of interesting topics of love that I've never really heard before. I've never heard anyone sing a song about going and making out with your ex-lover's past boyfriends and then having, I think, an orgy with them so you can make him jealous. I've never heard anything like that before. And the production kind of influences this sound and style as well. I mean, he just has this completely otherworldly sound to his music in every single song and every aspect of every song. I love this record. I love everything about it, and I am really, really, really looking forward to seeing what serpentwithfeet does next. At number 10, we have Virtue by the Voidz. This is what I've been waiting to hear from Julian Casablancas. I've heard all this hype off of The Strokes and some of his solo work. I enjoyed his feature on Daft Punk's last album, but really, I've been waiting to hear an album from him that really just blows me away, and this is it. It's just so much incredible music going on here. There's elements of psychedelia, there's elements of IDM, there's elements of EDM, there's elements of funk, there's just so many different unique instrumentation choices, like some of the drum samples on stuff like All Words Are Made Up, or the synth guitar that leads the way on Pyramid of Bones, and the piano melody on Permanent High School. There's just so much here. There's so much good shit here. Every single track brings something new to the table. At number 9, we have Wide Awake by Parquet. It's definitely one of the better political records I've heard this year, where it just kind of is inspiring others to open their eyes, which you can hear through the main message, but it also makes a really fun and re-listenable record out of that concept. I mean, you have the song Wide Awake, which is just so dancey and so funky and so groovy, and then you have something like Almost Had to Start a Fight / In and Out of Patience, which is, again, it's funky, but it's very like it's very punk inspired. It gets you to bang your head more than it does to get you like bopping and grooving and this kind of stuff. At number 8, we have probably one of the more controversial picks on here, and that's Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino by the Arctic Monkeys. This is my favorite Arctic Monkeys album. I love the band, and now I love them even more because of this record. Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino is my favorite because it is just so unique. It's so different from anything else they've ever made before. Yeah, there's Bowie influence here. You can make the argument that they're even just copying Bowie. But to make a claim like that and just to be so passive about it and just pass them off as that is just to be discrediting their artistic license and how that comes through on this record. There's a really unique conceptuality to every single track on here. It feels like I'm listening to the soundtrack of some like really low budget indie film where there's some sort of like murder mystery or some kind of anthology type thing going on in some jazz lounge where the only connection to each story is the band themselves playing on the stage and just them soundtracking each unique thing that happens. And I think I've just got an idea for a film. No one take that. At number 7, we have Iridescence by Brockhampton. Disappointing for some people. I enjoyed it thoroughly, though. And while I will say I probably would have rather have gotten what they were cooking up for us on Puppy, because a lot of what they were playing for us did sound really fascinating and sounded like they were making some of their best music to date on there. But they've still made some of their best music to date on here. I mean, they're very early in their career. I don't doubt that they're gonna stop making their best material anytime soon, and it seems like they're definitely taking more of their time with their upcoming album. But appreciate the fact that they made this album in 10 days. 10 days. I mean, yeah, they had material that they like picked and plucked from Puppy and from previous songs that they had already shown off that they got to put onto this album, but a lot of this stuff was original material. Most of it was original material, and there's so much artistic growth on here, and there's so much new stuff that they add to their catalog, and I was just completely entranced by it the whole time, and all of the really unique experimental production, and just everything about it just really grabbed me and kept me for, like, when it was released to now. At number 6, we have Taboo by Denzel Curry. This shit is dark. It's dark as shit. It's very dark. It has a very looming, unknown, evil presence to it on a lot of these tracks here. Even the opening track, which is supposed to be on the lighter side of the album, is just super dark. And I think that's what gripped me about Taboo. The concept, the idea of a light, a gray, and a dark disc to each, like, third of the album. And you can see how it changes over time, how it slowly progresses into this, like, complete madman's world that is the mind of Denzel Curry. You have the light side where he finds little bits of happiness in his life of mostly darkness. You have the gray side where he is very depressed, he's very sad, he's got a lot on his mind. And then you have the dark side where all of this depression kind of comes out in a complete fit of rage, and he just spits so much violent shit at everybody. The way this record leaves you in that way is all the more powerful. If you didn't have this kind of concept backing it, you would just have 13 tracks that, yeah, they slowly got darker and darker, and you would have picked up on that, but you wouldn't have the kind of thought process you would with the 3 different discs. At number 5, we have Boarding House Reach by Jack White. Easily what will go down as one of the best blues rock albums of the entire decade. Jack White comes in with his best solo work to date. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed Blunderbuss. I kind of enjoyed Lazaretto, but definitely not as much as Blunderbuss. But this is a whole new level. I've never seen him do anything like this. This is just completely out of my realm of expectations that I had going into this album. There's main blues rock influence, yes, probably harder influence than any of his previous albums. There's influence from his previous albums with the kind of coffee house rock style that he usually tends to pander to. There's elements of hip-hop on some tracks. There's elements of jazz and bebop. There's elements of electronica and IDM. There's so much on here. There's so much to digest in one sitting that by the time I finished it, I was kind of sitting in stunned silence. At number 4, come on. It's the Grips. The Grips are back at it again with Year of the Snitch. This is, so far at least, their furthest from rap album to date, and I think it really benefits from that. The rock influence on here, the different styles of rock, more so than Jenny Death, I'd argue, because on Jenny Death they did kind of just specifically use like one style of like hard rock, but here they just try all different kinds of stuff. There's math rock, there is krautrock, there is hard rock on here, there's heavy metal, there's psychedelic rock. There's so many different influences on here packed into one, and the kind of unfinished sound of it, like some of the mixing sounds really spotty in some areas. It just sounds like the album is slowly decaying as you go on further, and knowing Death Grips, that's most likely part of the concept. It's fascinating. It is a very fascinating release one of the best in their catalog so far, I'd say, and I am very much looking forward to hear what they do this year. At number 3, we have You Won't Get What You Want by Daughters, which is, like I said, Taboo was dark, and this shit is just horrifying. This thing, like, vomits in your ears, but it, like, vomits acid, and you're just, like, you're in pain from listening to it, and not because it's bad, but because it makes you feel the anguish that is being displayed on every single song here. Every single one has this looming presence in every single instrumental, especially stuff like Satan in the Wait and Daughters, like some of the longer cuts with some, like, less heavy instrumentation, but they just work so well. And then a couple tracks later, or maybe even one track later, there will be a payoff from it that just completely knocks you off your feet from how just heavy it is. It is 10 tracks and 50 minutes of absolute terrifying brilliance, and I could not get enough of it. At number 2, we have probably the saddest album on this list, and that's Some Rap Songs by Earl Sweatshirt. Once again, one of those albums that really, like, makes you feel the emotion of every single song. I mentioned when I was talking about The Mint that there was this really loud and claustrophobic mixing to it that made you feel trapped in your own, like, situation, kind of like Earl is. That's every song here. Every single song has that. Especially some of the more experimental cuts like Nowhere to Go, which, I mean, really creates the feeling of being lost. It feels like I'm traveling through a maze, but it's really like the walls are very closed in, and I'm almost like shimmying through some parts because I just can't fit my whole self in there, but I can't figure out where to go because the maze is so damn long. And honestly, that's kind of what this whole album feels like. It feels like you're traveling through this long maze with Earl, but the only reason with that in multiple senses is that not only are you feeling his emotions of being lost, not knowing where to go, kind of feeling trapped, but also kind of puzzling to figure out what exactly he's trying to say on some of these songs. And I loved it. I really did love it. And at number 1, this is going to be a very surprising pick. But it came out at the start of the year. I've been playing it ever since, and as much as I've told myself, nah, this ain't album of the year, and even times where I've put it off of the whole, like, 25 list entirely, I can't ignore it anymore. I can't keep ignoring it. I have to give credit where the credit is due. It's the album I've come back to the most. It's the album that I've re-listened to the most. The album that I've enjoyed listening to the most because I've kept on coming back to it so many times. And that album is Veteran by JPEGMAFIA. First of all, Peggy is an incredible rapper. His flows are so... they're not necessarily unique, but they are just so fitting to every single song, and the way he switches them up for every single song, despite the fact that some of these instrumentals, you're like, how is he doing this? How is he rapping over this stuff? And I talked about that with the real Niga cut from the songs list, but he's such a good technical rapper in that way that he not only manages to change up his flows for so many songs, he manages to find flows that work for songs that you could not possibly imagine working. I tend to forget about the fact that he doesn't actually have that many, like, super interesting lyrical topics on here, and more so focus on the fact that he doesn't need that. And it never really feels like he needs that kind of stuff. A lot of the times he just trades that out for being really fucking funny. He's such a hilarious rapper.
Bitch, I shop at Whole Foods like I'm bougie.
That line at the start of Whole Foods, just it cracks me up. It still cracks me up to this day. That never go blonde like Kanye line where he stops himself and kind of goes like, hold up, wait, promise I'll never go blonde like Kanye? On Baby I'm Bleeding is just so funny to me. The Mike Seatown reference, all the Drake references he pulls off on here, and just the way that he's making fun of just everybody. He's showing everybody his middle finger, and he doesn't give a shit about anybody's response to that. But I think what really keeps attracting me to this record, and the reason I say it's my favorite record of the year, is because it feels like a Mad Villainy for a new generation. For those of you who don't know, Mad Villainy is one of my all-time favorite albums. It's definitely one of my favorite rap albums as well. I love that record so much. I love all of the wild experimentation that goes on there, all the abstract ideas, all the unique sampling, and the fact that it's so condensed. It's 22 tracks, but like 45 minutes. And that kind of thing is really admirable, and I admire Veteran in the same way, that he made a Mad Villainy for a trap generation. All the sampling on here is just almost Death Grips-esque, the way they sample stuff like Vancouver Sky Trains and like tennis matches with Serena Williams, or a printer of all things. Peggy will like sample gargling, like I mentioned with Real Niga, or on the song Thug Tears, he samples him clicking a pen over and over again. Or one time, I think it was 1488, I think was the song, he sampled like a checkout stand at like a grocery store. And once again, the condensed feel of it. There's very short tracks on here. I think the longest one is like 4.5 minutes. But it's 19 tracks, it's 47 minutes. It's very re-listenable, at least to me. It's not going to be to everybody. Some people, it's just going to pierce your ears and you're going to be like, no, I don't like that. Like, there are some songs where the sampling, it sounds like they're just going in one ear and then just completely out the other. And I don't know, I really like that about it, honestly. It's absolutely fantastic. And I cannot wait to hear what Peggy does next. So in honor of this album, I really have to say, damn, Peggy! That's gonna be it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. What were some of your favorite albums? Let me know in the comments, and I'll tell you you're wrong, probably. Unless you agree, in which case you're right. So, see ya.